Imagine a city born from myth, suckled by a she-wolf and destined to rule the world. Picture its legions marching in perfect lockstep, their eagles glinting under foreign suns. This is the story of Rome, a small city-state on the Tiber River that grew into a sprawling empire, shaping the very foundations of Western civilization. But how did a republic, founded on the ideals of liberty and shared power, transform into an autocracy ruled by emperors who were sometimes gods, sometimes monsters? How did this colossus, which seemed eternal, eventually crumble into ruin, leaving behind a legacy that echoes through our own world today? Join us as we journey through 1,000 years of ambition, betrayal, conquest, and collapse to uncover the epic saga of Rome. Our story begins not with emperors and marble palaces, but with humble farmers and citizen soldiers. In 509 BC, the Romans overthrew their last king, Tarquin the Proud, and declared they would never again be ruled by a single man. They created a republic, the res publica, or the public thing. Power was shared between two consuls, elected annually, and the Senate, a council of elders from the city's leading families. This system was designed to prevent any one individual from gaining too much control. In these early days, figures like Cincinnatus became legends. A simple farmer, he was granted absolute power to save Rome from an invasion, and once the threat was neutralized, he immediately relinquished his authority and returned to his plow. This was the Roman ideal: duty over personal ambition, service to the state above all else. But the Republic was never truly a democracy for all. Society was starkly divided between the patricians, the wealthy, land-owning aristocracy, and the plebeians, the common folk. For centuries, the plebeians fought for their rights in a struggle known as the conflict of the orders. They demanded fair laws, relief from debt, and a voice in government. Through protests and sheer persistence, they won major victories, like the creation of the 12 Tables, Rome's first written legal code, and the office of the tribune, who could veto actions of the Senate to protect the common people. This internal struggle forged a resilient and adaptable political culture, one that allowed Rome to not only survive, but to thrive. While wrestling with its internal divisions, Rome was also expanding. What began as a fight for survival against its Italian neighbors soon became a relentless campaign of conquest. The Punic Wars against the mighty naval power of Carthage were a defining moment. This was a clash of titans, personified by two of history's greatest generals, Rome's Scipio Africanus and Carthage's Hannibal Barca. Who can forget the image of Hannibal leading his army, complete with war elephants, on an audacious trek across the Alps to strike at the heart of Italy? For years he terrorized the peninsula, but Rome's stubborn resilience ultimately won out. By defeating Carthage, Rome became the undisputed master of the Mediterranean, which they proudly called Mare Nostrum, our sea. This massive expansion brought unimaginable wealth, but it also planted the seeds of the Republic's destruction. Vast fortunes flowed into the hands of a select few, creating a massive gap between the super-rich and the impoverished masses. Small farmers, the backbone of the old Roman army, were driven off their land by large, slave-run estates called latifundia. They flocked to Rome, forming a volatile, unemployed urban mob. Brothers Tiberius and Gaius Gracchus, two noble tribunes, saw the danger. They proposed radical land reforms to redistribute wealth and help the poor. For their efforts, they were both assassinated by senators who saw them as a threat to their power and privilege. Their deaths marked a dark turning point. Political violence had replaced debate, and blood had been spilled in the heart of Rome. The old system was breaking down. Generals like Gaius Marius and Lucius Cornelius Sulla created professional armies, loyal not to the state, but to them personally. Soldiers were promised land and riches in exchange for their loyalty. The Republic was torn apart by a series of brutal civil wars as powerful men vied for ultimate control. It is in this chaotic landscape that one of the most famous names in history emerges: Gaius Julius Caesar. A brilliant general, a master politician, and a charismatic leader, Caesar conquered Gaul, modern-day France, adding vast new territories to Rome and earning the undying devotion of his legions. His famous crossing of the Rubicon River with his army was an act of treason, a direct challenge to the Senate's authority. His words, "Alea iacta est," the die is cast, signaled the beginning of the end for the Republic. After defeating his rival, Pompey the Great, in a globe-spanning civil war, Caesar returned to Rome not as a general, but as its undisputed master. He was made dictator for life, and though he never called himself a king, he held all the power. He enacted popular reforms, but his ambition and autocratic style worried many senators. They feared he would destroy the last vestiges of the Republic. On the Ides of March, 44 BC, a group of conspirators led by Brutus and Cassius famously assassinated him on the floor of the Senate. They believed they were restoring liberty, but they had only unleashed another wave of civil war. Caesar's death created a power vacuum that was quickly filled by his adopted son Octavian and his top general Mark Antony. Initially allies, Octavian and Antony soon turned on each other in the final struggle for Rome's soul. Their conflict culminated in the naval battle of Actium in 31 BC. It was a clash of east and west, with Antony and his lover, the Egyptian queen Cleopatra, facing the cool, calculating might of Octavian's fleet. Octavian's victory was total. Antony and Cleopatra took their own lives, and Egypt, the last great independent kingdom of the Mediterranean, became a Roman province. The civil wars were finally over. After a century of bloodshed, Rome was at peace, but the Republic was dead. Octavian returned to Rome a hero. Cautious not to repeat Caesar's mistakes, he masterfully created a new political order. He claimed to be restoring the Republic, but in reality he held all the power. The Senate granted him the title Augustus, the revered one, and he became Rome's first emperor. The age of the empire had begun. Under Augustus and his successors, the Roman world entered a period of unprecedented peace and prosperity, known as the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. For 2 centuries, the empire flourished. Roads, aqueducts, and magnificent cities were built across 3 continents. A single currency and a common legal system facilitated trade and communication from Britain to Mesopotamia. Life in the city of Rome was a spectacle. 1 million people crammed into its bustling streets, enjoying public baths, free grain, and bloody entertainment at the Colosseum, where gladiators fought to the death. Emperors like Trajan and Hadrian ruled wisely, expanding the empire to its greatest extent and building iconic structures like Hadrian's Wall. But this golden age also saw its share of tyrants, like the mad Caligula and the cruel Nero, whose reigns were marked by paranoia and excess. Yet even at its height, the empire faced deep-seated problems. Its vast size made it increasingly difficult to govern and defend. Barbarian tribes constantly pressed on its frontiers along the Rhine and Danube rivers. The economy was heavily reliant on conquest and slave labor, and when expansion stopped, the flow of wealth slowed. A series of weak and incompetent emperors in the 3rd century led to a period of intense crisis, with constant civil war, economic collapse, and devastating plagues. The empire nearly tore itself apart. It was saved by the iron will of 2 emperors, Diocletian and Constantine. Diocletian divided the empire into a tetrarchy, a rule of 4, to make it more manageable. And Constantine, after winning a decisive battle under the sign of a cross, took a step that would change the world forever. He legalized Christianity. He also moved the capital of the empire eastward, to a new city he named Constantinople, leaving the old Rome to slowly decline. The division of the empire into East and West became permanent after Constantine. The Eastern Roman Empire, later known as the Byzantine Empire, would thrive for another 1,000 years. But the Western Empire was living on borrowed time. It was plagued by internal decay, political instability, and relentless pressure from migrating Germanic tribes, the Goths, Vandals, and Franks, who were themselves being pushed westward by the Huns, fierce warriors from the Asian steppes. In 410 AD, the unthinkable happened. The city of Rome was sacked by the Visigoths. For the first time in 800 years, the Eternal City had fallen to a foreign enemy. The psychological shock was immense. The final blow came in 476 AD, when the last Western Roman emperor, a young boy ironically named Romulus Augustulus, was deposed by the Germanic chieftain Odoacer. There was no great battle, no dramatic final stand. The Western Roman Empire simply withered away. So why did Rome fall? There is no single answer. It was a perfect storm of military overreach, political corruption, economic weakness, and social decay. It was the pressure from barbarian migrations and the hollowing out of its traditional institutions. But even in its collapse, Rome did not truly die. Its legacy is all around us, in our languages, our laws, our architecture, and our ideas of government. The story of Rome is a timeless and cautionary tale of how a republic can become an empire, and how even the mightiest of empires can fall. It reminds us that nothing is permanent, and that the future is never guaranteed. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey through the rise and fall of Rome. If you found this story as fascinating as we do, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into history. Let us know in the comments what part of Roman history you find most intriguing. We'll see you in the next one.